They broke my arm, but they never broke my spirit. Texas this morning, warm sunlight, gentle air. Yet inside me, the storm hasn't passed. Morning sunlight filters through cream-colored curtains, casting long golden stripes across the old wooden floor. The little house on the outskirts of Texas stands as still as ever. Only my breathing has grown heavier, perhaps because this light no longer feels warm enough to fill the cracks in my heart. I walk slowly towards the kitchen. My thin, familiar hands turn the stove on, setting an old kettle upon the flame. The faint hiss of gas, the soft whoosh of fire, sounds that begin every day. From the cupboard, I pull a small jar of dried mint leaves, John's favorite scent every morning. On the wooden table near the window, where the sunlight always gathers, the carved initials, J+M, still remain. John etched them with his pocket knife the first year we moved in. He had smiled then and said, "So you'll remember, no matter what happens, this house will keep you." I brush my fingers over the shallow grooves, feeling as if I've touched an old wound that's healed but still warm. The kettle begins to whistle. I drop in the tea leaves and let the steam rise, releasing its quiet fragrance. Mist clouds over the window pane, reflecting the faint image of me sitting across from an empty chair. That chair. No one has sat in it for 10 long years. I pour myself a cup, take a deep breath, and watch the light crawl gently up the walls, sliding through each wooden seam. Everything here was built by John's hands, with love, with patience, with faith. Every morning, I brew tea exactly the way he liked it. Strong, but never bitter. It's my way of holding on to his breath, his warmth, his memory. And every sip, every sunrise whispers to me, he's still here in the sunlight, in the scent of mint, and in the rhythm of my heartbeat. We were young then, and fearless. John brought home stacks of fresh pine boards one day and said, "We'll build it ourselves." I laughed, thought he was joking, but he pulled out his old ruler, measured each inch carefully, and hammered the first nail as the wind rolled across the field. Evenings were golden. The sun bent low on his sweat-damp shirt, the scent of raw wood mixed with birdsong, and our laughter. He'd say, "A house isn't just shelter. It's where love learns to live." The house was never perfect. The kitchen corner leaned a little, and one floorboard in the living room always squeaked underfoot. But John said, "That sound reminds us the house is alive." He was right. Every scratch on the railing marked another Christmas. Every faded coat of paint remembered a summer when Ethan turned a year older. John would carve little dates into the wood anniversaries' birthdays, the night a storm tore through town, but left our roof untouched. He'd wink and say, "If you ever get tired, lean against this wall." I built it out of our happiest days. So I did. For decades, I leaned on this promise. To keep the house was to keep the love. And for half my life, I've lived inside his vow. Even now, though he's gone, I can still hear his steady breath in these walls. Our son, Ethan. He was our pride. John's eyes would light up whenever Ethan came home, with an award clutched in his small hands. The boy would sit on the porch, watching his father carve wood, asking question after question. When I felt tired, he'd pour me water, pat my hand, whisper, "Rest, Mom. I'll do it." He was kind. Then, bright, curious, gentle, like the Texas sun in early June. But when John passed, something shifted. The house felt emptier, and Ethan grew restless. He took odd jobs, quit, tried again. Then came the luck. Just a few games, Mom, he'd said. But a few turned into many, and luck turned into debt. I sold my wedding ring to clear the first loan. Sold John's old truck to cover the second. By the third, I pawned the little apartment downtown, one filled with laughter and birthdays, to keep Ethan from sinking under his own weight. Each time I saved him, he'd cry, "Hug me, swear to change." And each time I believed. I told myself, he's just lost. He'll find the path again. But small detours can become abysses. Friends stopped calling. Family grew quiet. Each night, I'd sit on the porch, staring down that dark road, praying he'd return in one piece. I held onto this house for John, for Ethan, for all the memories that gave us life. But deep down, I began to see the truth. I'd bought his freedom with my own life. One evening, a harsh screech of brakes shattered the silence. I looked up to see Ethan, gaunt, red-eyed, shirt, wrinkled shoulders, sagging under invisible chains. He pushed the door open. The smell of whiskey and smoke filled the room. He didn't greet me. His eyes scanned the room coldly, assessing measuring. Then he spoke flat and sharp as a knife Mom sell the house. The words struck like stones, dropped down a well-hollow final. I set down my cup. My voice stayed calm, though heavy as lead. No. He frowned. You want to watch your son get arrested? If we sell, I'll clear the debt. I'll take care of you. I shook my head. Memories can't pay interest, Ethan. This house isn't a vault. His tone hardened. Your memories buried, Dad? I rose, meeting his eyes. Don't dishonor your father in the home he built. The air thickened. Ethan stepped back, clenched his fist, and slammed it into the wall, the very plank that always creaked. The sound cracked through the room. Blood bloomed across his knuckles. He turned away, stormied out, slamming the door so hard the curtain shuddered. I sat in the echo of his footsteps, the porch groaning under his weight, the wind sighing through the open gap. Quietly, I wiped the spilled tea from the table. My fingers drifted across J+M again. The wood was cold, my heart colder still. That night, sleep never came. The lamp cast a pool of golden light, stretching my shadow long across the wall. The old clock ticked, each sound a drop falling into the silence. Wind slipped through the crack under the door, carrying the chill of an oncoming storm. I folded a towel, straightened a frame, adjusted a chair, tried to fix the room as if order could bring back peace. But I knew some things once broken can't be mended. I remembered John's hand, the warmth of his promise, keep the house and it will keep you. I remembered Ethan's laughter, as a boy bright and clean as the morning sun. Now those echoes drifted like ghosts, too far to reach. I sat there torn between love and fear. Love for the boy I raised, fear for the man he's become. Outside headlights slid across the wall, then disappeared into the dark. I pressed a hand against my chest, feeling a heartbeat that stumbled. If I sell the house, I lose John forever. If I keep it, I might lose Ethan for good. The wind rose sighing through the porch like a warning. I exhaled, soft and steady, and whispered into the quiet, I know. This storm isn't over. The storm came without warning that night. Rain slashed across the windows, whispering against the wooden walls like old ghosts come home. The house felt heavier, damp cold, echoing with the smell of wet earth. I shut the curtains, folded the papers on the table, property deeds, insurance, the last few things I owned, and placed John's photograph on top, facing me. His eyes in that picture were calm, certain, steady. I drew in a shaky breath. Outside, a car engine coughed, sputtered and died. Then came the pounding. Mom, the voice was hoarse, slurred. Mom opened the door. Thunder rolled. I froze for a second, hand on the lock. Then his voice cracked through the rain. You want to see me dead? Huh? Is that what you want? I closed my eyes. It wasn't the first time Ethan had shown up like this, drunk, desperate. But tonight, something in the air felt different. The storm wasn't just outside, it was walking toward me. I opened the door. There he was, drenched eyes, bloodshot, breath thick with whiskey and anger. Come in, I said softly. You'll catch your death out there. He staggered inside, water pooling at his feet. My death, he spat. You're killing me, Mom. Every damn time you say no. Ethan, I kept my voice even. What you're asking, it's not help. It's surrender. He laughed a broken sound, shaking his head. Surrender. You think holding on to this place makes you strong? It's a prison. Mom, you're locked in with his ghost. His words were knives, but I'd been cut before. I knew how to bleed quietly. I stepped closer, handed him a towel. Sit down, drink some water. He slapped it away. The towel fell onto the floor with a dull thud. Water won't fix this, he barked. Money will. But you don't care, do you? You'd rather see me drown. Rain hammered harder. I looked at him, this man who once laughed under summer skies, and whispered, I just want you to remember who you were. But he didn't hear me. Or maybe he didn't want to. The storm outside roared on, matching the one inside him. The next morning, the clouds hung low and gray. The house smelled of rain and regret. Ethan sat at the table, eyes, hollow fingers tapping restlessly. I set a cup of tea in front of him. He didn't touch it. Instead, he leaned forward, voice rough. Let's make a deal. You sell the house, I'll clear the debt. After that, I'll take care of you. I met his gaze, steady and tired. You can't buy back what this house holds. He smirked. What it holds? Memories. Memories don't pay interest, Mom. His words landed hard, cold. The thunder grumbled again, closer now. Ethan, I said love isn't a transaction. This house, it's not for sale. Not to anyone. He pushed back his chair so hard it scraped the floor. Not even to your own son. The question hit deeper than any curse. I reached for my cup, hands trembling. The china slipped, shattering on the table. Tea splashed across my palm, hot, and a shard cut through my skin. Blood mingled with the spilled water, a thin red line swirling on the wood. He froze, eyes darting from the wound to my face. For a moment, something human flickered there, remorse maybe, but it vanished as quickly as it came. He turned away, muttering, "You'll regret this." I pressed a cloth to my hand, watching the storm outside blur the window into streaks of gray. "I already do," I whispered, though not for the reason he thought. That evening, the storm deepened. Wind rattled the porch. Every creak, every sigh of the floorboards felt like a warning. I sat in the living room, clutching the silver locket around my neck, the one with the tiny key John had given me years ago. It opened the safe, hidden behind the painting. Inside were the papers Ethan wanted, ownership deeds, the proof of everything I'd built and kept. The front door slammed open. He stood there again, sober this time, but wild-eyed, jaw-tight veins pulsing at his temple. "Where is it?" he demanded. I stayed seated. "Where is what?" "The key," his voice cracked. "The damn key, Mom. I know you're hiding it." My fingers closed tighter around the locket. "This isn't the way." He stepped closer. Rain dripped from his coat onto the floor. "Give it to me. Now." "Ethan," I said, "give it." He reached forward, grabbing for the chain. I stumbled back, clutching it to my chest. "Stop," I cried. "You don't know what you're doing." Lightning flared through the window, painting the room white. His hand jerked rough, tearing at my wrist. The chain snapped. Pain shot through my arm as I fell against the chair. For the first time, his eyes were not my son's. They were a stranger's, someone lost to rage. The thunder cracked again, as if the sky itself couldn't bear to watch. And then he raised his hand. The sound wasn't loud. It was the silence after that hurt. The table toppled. The chair broke. My breath caught as I hit the floor. His shadow hovered, trembling, then turned and fled into the storm. I lay there, arm bent, wrong, blood trickling from my temple. Somewhere above me, the roof groaned under the rain, as though the house itself was weeping. I turned my face toward the photograph on the table, whispering through clenched teeth, "John, he's done it again. He's broken what you built." Then darkness took me, soft, cold, and endless. When I woke, the rain had stopped. The silence was louder than the storm. The clock on the wall ticked faintly, each sound an echo of my heartbeat. The house smelled of iron and wet dust. I dragged myself upright, cradling the broken arm against my chest. My fingers shook as I tore a sheet into strips, binding it tight, wincing at every pull. The wound on my forehead throbbed warm and sticky, but I didn't cry. Not this time. I set the chair upright, wiped the blood from the floor, straightened John's photograph on the table. His face, still smiling, caught a shard of morning light through the window. "I kept my promise," I whispered. "My love, I kept our home." When I opened my eyes, the world was white, sterile walls, distant voices, and the faint scent of antiseptic. My arm hung heavy, wrapped tight in plaster. A nurse adjusted my pillow gently, asking questions I barely heard. All I remember was the weight of the blanket, the hum of the lights, and the emptiness beside me. A neighbor had found me collapsed on the floor, soaked in rain blood crusted on my temple. They said I was lucky, but it didn't feel like luck. It felt like survival, a mercy I hadn't asked for. Later, when they left me alone, I turned to the small mirror across the bed. The reflection, Staring back was a stranger. Silver hair tangled one eye, swollen lips split. A white bandage wrapped around my brow like a mark of surrender. For a long while, I just stared at the lines carved by years of hope, at the bruises painted by love's consequence. I whispered, barely a sound. I didn't raise a monster. But I fed one. Tears welled, but didn't fall. They trembled in my lashes like dew on the edge of dawn. I pressed my good hand over my chest and breathed through the ache. I loved him too much to teach him pain, and that was my mistake. Outside, the rain softened to a drizzle, tapping the window, like a second hand keeping time. Each drop reminded me, love without boundaries becomes a wound that never heals. 2 days later, I was back home. My arm ached with every movement, but the silence was heavier. I turned on the old lamp, and there it was, a message blinking on my phone. Ethan, sell the house or take care of yourself. No apology, no remorse. Only a threat dressed as choice. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. Then quietly, I deleted it. I wouldn't answer cruelty with desperation anymore. Through the rain-smeared window, I watched a droplet slide down the glass, slow, steady, inevitable. It trailed its path like a tear on skin. Maybe that's what love looks like when it's finally let go, one drop falling into silence, no longer begging to be caught. The next morning, I called the lawyer. His voice was steady, professional, but there was a softness when I told him everything. He listened, then said, Mrs. Miller, if you truly want to protect the house, there's a way. Transfer it to a foundation. Safe Haven works with families like yours. It will belong to you in name, but cannot be sold or seized, not even by next of kin. I sat there, phone warm in my palm, thinking of all the nights I'd fought to keep these walls standing. What if I asked, voice trembling, what if I want him to come back someday but not take it? He paused. Then leave him something else, but not the power to destroy what built him. Later that day, I went to his office. The papers were thick, the ink black and permanent. My hand shook as I signed each stroke, slow but sure. When it was done, he looked at me kindly. You've done something hard, but right. I nodded. Sometimes love means closing a door before it burns. Outside, the sky cleared. For the first time in weeks, I felt air move through my lungs like forgiveness. That night, I sat at the table with a fountain pen and a single sheet of paper. The lamp cast a halo over the words as they formed firm, unbroken. A house is where love lives, not greed. I pressed the seal, folded the page, and placed it inside a brown envelope. My hand lingered over it, warm from my pulse, steady from my choice. Then I looked toward John's photograph. You taught me how to build, I murmured. I'm still learning how to let go. Beyond the window, the rain had stopped. Clouds parted slowly, spilling soft light across the porch. Somewhere, a bird began to sing, unsure but hopeful. Maybe endings don't arrive with thunder. Maybe they come with quiet skies. Before dawn, I began to pack. Not much, a few clothes, a photo. The old teapot, John's hammer still rusted at the edge. I folded each item like a chapter, careful not to break the spine. The house was still dark when I walked through its rooms. I ran my fingers along the walls, the grain of the wood, warm beneath my skin. Every nail, every crack, every creak, John had touched them all. In the living room, I paused before the safe. My bandaged hand twisted the key, opened the door, and placed the envelope inside. On the front, I wrote in small, deliberate letters, when you are ready to come home, learn to build again. I shut the safe, rested my palm against its cold metal, and exhaled. Outside, the horizon was turning gold. I slung the small bag over my shoulder, took one last look at the framed initials, J plus M, carved into the table, and smiled. Goodbye, my love, I whispered. The house will hold what we couldn't. As I stepped through the door, the wind stirred softly through the porch, brushing my hair like a farewell. A week later, the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Mrs. Miller, a voice asked, "This is Officer Ramirez. I'm afraid we have your son in custody, caught breaking into a pawn shop. He's asking for you." For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. I steadied myself with a hand against the wall. "Do you wish to post bail?" he asked gently. I closed my eyes. In the quiet, I heard John's voice, the one that always said, "Strength isn't silence. It's saying no when your heart wants to rescue. When I opened my mouth, my voice was calm. No, officer. I do not. There was a pause on the line, then a soft understood. After he hung up, I sat down, placed my good hand over my heart, and breathed slow, full, unbroken. The house around me hummed in the stillness, no longer echoing with ghosts. For the first time, the silence didn't ache. It felt whole. The pastor came by the next morning, hat in hand, eyes soft with concern. He sat quietly across from me, letting the silence rest before speaking. "Mrs. Miller," he began gently, "people are talking. They say you refuse to post bail for your son. Are you not afraid they'll call you cold or unkind?" I looked down at my bandaged hand, resting in the sunlight, the way it trembled when I tried to pour tea. My voice was steady, though thin from use. "I'm not afraid of being called unkind," I said. "I'm afraid of losing myself." He nodded his face, solemn understanding the weight beneath those words. "Some wounds aren't visible, but they scar deeper than any broken bone." The morning light climbed higher across the table, bathing my hands in gold. I could feel its warmth, steady, real. Unlike the fleeting heat of anger or guilt. For years, I had carried Ethan's choices as if they were my own. Paid his debts, hid his mistakes, stitched together the tatters of his life with thread spun from my love. But this time, I could not mend what he'd torn. Some lessons, I realized, can only be taught by silence. So when the pastor left, I sat by the window, watching the dust dance in the beams of light. Outside, children's laughter drifted from the street. Life continued unhurried, unbothered. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to simply sit, to breathe, to exist without fixing. In the stillness, I whispered, "I'm not punishing him. I'm protecting what's left of me." Days passed before the first letter arrived. The handwriting was his messy, uncertain, pressed hard into the paper, like each word cost him something. "Mom, I miss home." Just 4 words. No excuses, no promises. Only longing, small and fragile. I traced the lines with my fingertips, feeling the indent of his pen. Then slowly, I folded the letter back into its envelope and set it aside. No reply, no words. Because silence, too, can be love. The kind that says, "I'm still here, but I will not walk the same path anymore." I placed the envelope in the drawer beside John's photograph. As it shut, a quiet breath left me half sorrow, half peace. "I'm not seeking revenge," I murmured to the still room. "I'm just stopping." One afternoon at the library downtown, I saw a flyer pinned to the board, "Mothers Who Still Stand. Support Group for Survivors of Family Violence." I stared at it for a long time before taking one. My fingers hesitated, but something inside me whispered, "Go." The first meeting was small. 5 women gathered in a circle of old chairs, each holding a cup of lukewarm tea. No one looked directly at one another at first. We all knew the weight of shame, of silence, of the bruises you can't explain at church or in the grocery line. When it was my turn, I spoke slowly. "My son hurt me, not because he hated me, but because I let him believe he could." A murmur of understanding passed through the room. One woman shared how her daughter pushed her down the stairs. Another spoke of money stolen from her purse. One whispered that her son had locked her out of her own house. We cried quietly, not from pity, but recognition. Pain mirrored back is strangely comforting. It tells you you're not crazy for hurting. By the end of that hour, we were not just strangers sharing grief. We were witnesses to one another's strength. We drafted a small statement together. A promise written in trembling hands, but sealed with courage. "I still love, but I will no longer endure." When I left that day, I felt lighter. The world outside was still cruel, still loud. But within me, something had shifted. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt sacred. Weeks passed. Leaves began to turn. Another letter came, this one longer, the handwriting neater, steadier. "Mom, I'm getting out soon. I've been thinking. I want to change." I sat at the table, the same spot where I'd signed away the house, and read it twice. His words were softer now, less angry. But behind them, I could still hear the rhythm of need, of someone trying to rebuild trust with borrowed tools. I closed my eyes. A part of me wanted to believe him, to hold him again and say everything could be undone. But another part, the wiser one, the one that had finally learned, knew better. I believe in change, I whispered to the empty room. But not in empty promises. I placed the letter with the first, both tucked neatly away. Then I stood, poured myself a cup of tea, and opened the window. The afternoon breeze carried the scent of rain and magnolia. The world was quiet, and so was I. Not broken, not bitter, just free. It had been months since the last letter, long enough for the seasons to change, long enough for my heart to grow still. Then one morning, as sunlight spilled across the doorstep, the mail arrived, a single envelope marked with his handwriting. I knew before opening it what I would find. There were no apologies waiting inside, no words of remorse. Just a plea, dressed as necessity. Mom, I need some money to start over. That was all. Short, bare, demanding. I read it once, then again. My lips curved, not in sorrow, not in anger, but something gentler, understanding perhaps. He had broken my arm, yes, but not my spirit. Pain had tested me. Time had tempered me. And love, real love, had taught me that to give endlessly is not grace, it's surrender. I folded the letter neatly, set it beside my tea, and let the silence breathe between the lines he hadn't written. The ones that said I'm not ready yet. And that was all right. Healing, I had learned, is not measured by who comes back. It's measured by who you become after they leave. So I reached for my pen, and a fresh page, the paper smooth beneath my hand, and began to write. Not a speech, not a sermon, just one simple truth. The house is still here, but you must learn how to build again. No bitterness, no warning, just a doorway left open if he ever chose to walk through it with clean hands and a new heart. I sealed the envelope, placed it by the window, and poured myself another cup of tea. The scent of mint rose softly in the light. Outside, the world moved on, birds darting past the eaves, children laughing down the street. Inside, time slowed. I lifted the cup, felt its warmth settle into my palms, and smiled at the sun as it reached across the room to meet me. I had nothing left to prove, nothing left to protect, just peace, small, quiet, earned. The afternoon stretched golden and still. Across from me, John's photograph glowed faintly, caught in a shaft of light. His eyes seemed to meet mine, not with pity, but pride. I don't need an apology, I whispered. I only need peace. The clock ticked softly on the wall, steady as a heartbeat. Love, I realized, had never left. It had only changed shape, from sacrifice to strength, from clinging to letting go. True love, I finally understood, has boundaries. Outside, the wind brushed gently against the porch, carrying with it the scent of rain far off and the promise of another day. And so if you're listening, wherever you are, whoever you've tried to save, remember this saying: no can be an act of love. A way of choosing truth over comfort, dignity over dependence. If you believe that silence too can speak, if you believe that love can draw a line and still be love, then say yes in the comments below and follow Grandma True Stories, where silence becomes strength and strength at last becomes peace.